This is part 3 of the Astral Fortress and Through Blood and Jesus to Heaven. Even the people who have no ears or hearing are affected by sound because it's physically there. Maybe even beyond that, religious texts tell us that God called everything into existence, technically casting a spell to bring upon the living light, the illusion. We are surrounded by this energy, as are all living beings, also the plants. So if we make sounds, we affect them. And the sound travels very far. The energy can reach the birds, and I could communicate with them if I could learn their sounds, which is possible to do. Or I could scare them by screaming, and usually this is not recognized as doing damage. Modern things such as punching is, although this energy travels into the brain and affects the nerves and does cause trauma. This is why we get taught to be silent, obedient. If we would realize the power that we have with this energy, we may see ourselves as not so insignificant. Even the word universe may be referring to life being a song, universe, a musical if you like. When we walk, even when we make footsteps, we make these sounds. We are walking energy. As I proved in my last video, most of us are brought up in a religious way. Whether we like it or not, there's a lot of deprogramming to do. These people usually end up rejecting a lot of music genres simply because it doesn't fit in their box. And actually ends up making sense to them because of the good and evil deception. Let me explain it to you. There's a list of things that they call good, which you are allowed to do. And it actually is so because they own your everyday actions. You're a slave. When you do these things, you don't interfere with their plans. So they don't mind it. They welcome it. So it's good for them. It's simple. Whereas if you do evil things, you actually interfere with their plans. They don't like that, so they put you away. Then you level up, become alive. That's why evil backwards is live. Mainstream music nowadays is put out in a certain way, recorded and released. Frequency, if you like. And even though on the outside most of it is joyful, which again, you are allowed to show, that's why they want you to smile on pictures, it's actually bringing you sounds from hell. I'm not in any way joking. Because the technology comes from different realms, these electronic sounds, which we are hearing nowadays, and we may be the first humans who do, are able to bring us sounds which we shouldn't actually be able to hear in nature. And we can also use it and connect to other realms with that, give us a taste of what we will hear in other lives. But they use it against us, and actually this joyful music makes people depressed nowadays.
You have to begin with the proper context of why should anyone even begin to be interested in a spiritual teaching at all. And the reason is because we are now, in this dimension that we're in is a sort of lucid dream. It's a state of sleepwalking that we entered when we were born. And we believe that what our senses are reporting to us is real, or that it exists on its own, but it is actually a kind of mass hallucination or an illusion that we must awaken from. And so the core issue here is really seeing reality properly. And if people really understood how urgent that was, it wouldn't just be a hobby or a recreational interest. It would be something that they would make the devotion of their life's energy to awakening from this illusion we're in. In other words, we are in a state of consciousness right now that is similar to a dream or sleep. And when we die, we will have an opportunity to awaken, or we can learn a spiritual tradition that will allow us to awaken now, in this lifetime. But that's the fundamental issue that people have to understand before they embark on any spiritual path. I mean, if you were really aware of how mysterious and strange the world that we're living in right now, what you are thinking is normality, what you're taking as your everyday reality, if you could really see it in its full strangeness, you would realize the necessity of awakening from it.
I don't expect anybody to take my word for this. I'm able to sense which music is quote-unquote messed up, and there's no words I can put it in. I can sense it right away when the song starts, so it's already messed up at its core. It has nothing to do with the lyrics or the melody. Almost all mainstream music is affected by it, and no other music. This is no coincidence. I've never heard it in any underground music, ever. It's also not only pop and its subgenres, it's also mainstream heavy metal, especially from the 70s and 80s. They use mostly pop because it's more accessible, therefore easier to deceive people. It's put out in a special way for the masses by these quote-unquote special people. I would go as far as saying that it has to do with being awake, because if your energy is so different, your spirit is going to end up rejecting everything that is too different. And for the people who are already in this trap, who are miserable, they will end up rejecting everything that is different to that. And also, of course, everything that goes against their invisible chains which have been put on them. And they end up supporting them because music, such as metal and punk, which goes against the system and society, they would end up rejecting for that reason also. There are chants, as I said in part 2, which we do naturally, but it's not something that you learn from books or YouTube videos. It has to flow naturally.
Is all sound magical?
Yes. For instance, to give you an example, sound is omnipresent. It's all around us all the time. And because we're always hearing sound, we take it for granted. We are using sonic magic at this very moment. Our vocal cords are producing abstract sounds that through a very complicated ancient system that can only be considered magical. And of course I understand most people don't really even understand what magic is. When they hear the word, it creates confusion. But basically, magic is understanding the way the mind works. It has to be pointed out that all music began as prayer. The first music that was ever made was to contact the gods, to contact spiritual beings, to communicate with spiritual beings. You have it within your own power to change your spiritual reality through the manipulation of sound. So here's the best example I can give. In ancient Egypt, a sorcerer or a magician was known, if you translate the word, one who speaks. So the voice is what creates reality. It not only creates reality, but it reflects.
The reason plants have been recorded to scream when they are hurt is because when you're really into this life, it becomes real. You identify with the character, and it's a gift from nature that we are able to experience these things. Usually humans don't understand this because we only think in flesh. As Decrepit Birth said, flesh binds the image for suffering. It applies to all animals. It's a present to be able to experience those things, but we don't realize that anymore. They may communicate at different frequencies, and maybe plants themselves sense each other's pain. I wouldn't know. Buddhists have temples where they channel the sound. They are built in a special way So they go invisible and levitate inside, supposedly. Nuns have always been reported to levitate for quite a while already, since they've been around, of course. And this is through absolute faith, which is important because, again, if you believe that something is absolutely real and you pray for it, doesn't matter if they believe in Jesus or anything like that, if they have been deceived in any way, because as long as they believe that what they're praying for is real, it will happen. Prayer is another form of magic. Modern spiritual teachings are about trying to move away from nature as far as possible, not accepting the way things are, which isn't going to make anybody happy, and in the end, trying to change nature, which is blasphemy. I would include all the religions, Islam, Hinduism, Christianity, in the category of going against creation, aka quote-unquote Satanism, but it's a misused word. It's more of a joke nowadays. That would be my own definition. I've never heard anybody use it that way. They teach you to become a spirit, essentially. These people are tired and bored of life. A comment that somebody left on one of my videos says it best. You become so spiritual that you become a spirit. Simply because the diets, for example, that they teach in some vegetarianism and plant-based diets are about getting closer to death. Generally, if you move away from nature, you get closer to death. I surround myself with things that I like. Addicting music, it tingles my senses, it gives me pleasure, the eargasms. It's definitely related to being awake, being able to hear the addicting music, even if it's a present from a different realm and maybe electronic, quote-unquote unnatural sounds. I still appreciate that and a lot of other unnatural things. I appreciate a lot of art.